Commander Xylan of the Valari Empire had fought humans before. He had stood on battlefields under burning skies, watching their ships rise from oceans like metal beasts. He had studied their weapons, their tactics, and their stubborn refusal to surrender. But nothing in his long military career had prepared him for the small black box now sitting on the table in front of him. Dr. Elias Marlowe, the human diplomat assigned to the peace talks, leaned back in his chair and smiled. "It's called a game," he said. "BioShock." Xylan's yellow eyes narrowed. His clawed fingers tapped the surface of the device. "A weapon?" he asked, his voice deep and careful. Marlowe shook his head. "No. A story you can step into, a place you can explore. Think of it as a simulation, but one built for the mind, not for the body." The Valari commander tilted his head. "Why show me this? We are here to discuss terms, not toys." Marlowe's smile didn't fade. "Because sometimes, Commander, toys tell the truth better than any treaty." The words hung in the air. Xylan felt something shift in the room, though he couldn't say what. The human placed a small, strange object in his hand, smooth, with buttons under his fingers. "Hold it like this. It's called a controller," Marlowe said. "Your hands will understand before your mind does." The large screen on the wall came to life with a flash of light. A calm, deep voice spoke from unseen speakers. "They told me, son, you were born to do great things." Xylan's ears twitched at the voice. A strange picture appeared. A man in a cramped seat holding a gift, speaking of dreams. And then, fire, water, screams. The human world vanished into a storm of chaos. He found himself staring into an ocean, the sky red with flames from a plane that had just crashed. "Is this real?" he asked. "No," Marlowe said. "But for a while, your mind will think it is." Xylan guided the on-screen figure forward, the water moving around him, flames licking the surface. Every detail was sharp, almost too sharp. He could almost smell the salt in the air. Ahead, a strange tower rose from the ocean, tall, black, and waiting. The alien felt his pulse quicken. It reminded him of the first time he had stepped into an enemy warship, quiet on the outside, hiding its teeth inside. He entered the tower. The voice returned, speaking of Rapture. A city beneath the sea. A place without kings, without gods. A place where one could be free. Xylan leaned forward, studying every detail as the elevator carried his character down. The glass walls revealed a city that glittered in the deep ocean, neon lights shining against dark water. He could see shapes moving in the distance, whales, fish, strange machines. "This is beautiful," Xylan admitted. The words slipped out before he could stop them. "Humans can build beauty," Marlowe said softly, "but wait until you see what they do with it." The elevator stopped. The doors opened, and the beauty was gone. The first figure Xylan saw was hunched over, muttering to itself. Its skin was pale and cracked, eyes glowing faintly. When it turned, it screamed, rushing forward with a hook in its hand. Xylan's claws tightened on the controller. He reacted instinctively, guiding his character away. "What is this creature?" he demanded. "A splicer," Marlowe said. "Once human, they changed themselves with power they couldn't control." The alien kept playing, moving through halls of shadow and flickering light. The walls dripped with water. Voices echoed through the air, some calm, some mad. Xylan noticed the writing on the walls, the posters, the broken statues. This place had once been alive, proud, full of promise. Now it was a ruin. He did not say it out loud, but something about Rapture unsettled Hay. To me, it was not the monsters or the darkness. It was the feeling that this had happened before, not in a human city, but in Valari history. He guided his character deeper, hearing distant laughter, cries, the hiss of steam. He saw a figure in a metal diving suit, massive, slow, with glowing eyes like moons, and beside it, a small child with unnaturally large eyes clutching a strange needle-like device. "What is she?" Xylan asked. "A little sister," Marlowe replied. "She collects something humans in this world call Adam. She's harmless, unless you decide otherwise." The alien frowned. "Decide? You'll see." The session continued for what felt like hours. Xylan's mind raced as he explored the broken city, meeting survivors, hearing speeches from voices that sounded both brilliant and insane. Every choice he made seemed to change the story. Every decision felt heavier than the last. At last, Marlowe leaned forward, pausing the game. "So, Commander," he said, "what do you think?" Xylan looked at the frozen image on the screen, the dark, drowned world, the glowing eyes in the distance, the city that promised freedom and delivered ruin. He did not answer right away. His claws rested lightly on the controller, as if he were holding a weapon he didn't yet know how to use. Finally, he said, "I think you are trying to tell me something, but I do not yet understand what." Marlowe's smile returned, smaller now, sharper. "Then keep playing." Xylan's gaze returned to the screen. The lights of Rapture glimmered like distant stars in the deep. Somewhere beyond the glass, something moved, watching, waiting. A city beneath the sea. The elevator doors slid open with a hiss, and Commander Xylan stepped forward into Rapture's shadowed halls. The air was heavy, the light dim. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, steady drops, each one echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. At first, he said nothing. His sharp Valari eyes scanned the ruined architecture. Tall, sweeping walls of glass holding back the ocean, lined with golden Art Deco frames. Somewhere beyond the glass, a giant whale swam past, its shadow stretching over the city like a passing storm cloud. "It is beautiful," he murmured, though the word came out reluctantly. He could not deny it. Humans had built something remarkable here. But there was a sickness in the beauty, something rotting beneath the gold. The sound of laughter broke the silence, not the laughter of joy. This was cracked, desperate, uneven. It came from behind a fallen pillar. Xylan's character moved closer, stepping over scattered papers and broken glass. The figure he found was hunched over, wearing a shredded dress, its skin pale and stretched thin over sharp bones. The eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. It muttered to itself, words spilling too fast to understand. Then suddenly, it looked up. Xylan tensed. The splicer screamed and rushed forward with a jagged metal hook in its hand. His instincts reacted before his thoughts. His claws tightened on the controller, dodging to the side, the sound of the hook scraping metal ringing in his ears. This is what your people imagine?" Xylan demanded, his voice low. "Not imagine," Marlowe replied calmly beside him. "Create." The word made Xylan pause for a moment. To the Valari, creation was always something pure. Ships, weapons, structures. But here was creation shaped into horror. He pressed forward. The halls twisted like a maze, lined with murals of smiling families and bold slogans about freedom. Yet the floors were wet with seawater, and the walls were marked with graffiti and blood. He found recordings, human voices trapped in small machines, speaking about science, politics, ambition. Some spoke with pride, others with despair. The alien could not ignore the strange pull of this place. It was as if Rapture was speaking directly to him, telling a story no treaty or Leafield could show. At one point, he stopped before a huge window. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, lit by neon signs in blues and reds. Strange fish drifted past, their scales reflecting the light like shards of glass. For a brief moment, it was peaceful, almost enough to make him forget the danger. Then came the sound, slow, heavy footsteps, each one making the ground vibrate slightly. The shape that emerged from the shadows was massive, its body covered in thick metal armor, its head a round helmet glowing with twin yellow lights. In one hand, it carried a huge drill that whirred to life with a terrible hum. Beside the armored figure walked a small girl. Her eyes were too big for her face, glowing faintly. She hummed to herself, dragging a long, needle-like tool across the floor as if it were a toy. Xylan froze. "Is she a prisoner?" he asked quietly. "In a way," Marlowe said. "She's a little sister. That thing beside her, a big daddy. You'll want to stay out of his way." Xylan watched as the two passed by slowly, the girl kneeling at a body on the floor and drawing some glowing liquid into her strange device. There was no fear in her, only routine, as if she had done this many times before. The alien's mind began connecting the pieces, the ruined city, the madness of the splicers, the strange guardians and children. Rapture had been a dream once, a place meant to be free, but freedom, unchecked, had eaten itself alive. They moved onward, deeper into the city. The noises grew stranger, broken announcements crackling over speakers, distant gunfire, and voices singing softly in the dark. More splicers appeared, each one twisted in its own way. Some moved like hunters, others like beggars. Xylan began to notice something else. Every person here had chosen this. No one had been forced to come to Rapture. They came seeking freedom, power, or escape, and in chasing those dreams they had destroyed themselves. The thought unsettled him more than the monsters. At one point he stopped in front of a wide staircase. At the top was a grand statue of a man, arms open, gaze looking toward the ocean beyond. At his feet were the words, "No gods or kings, only man." Xylan read the words aloud, tasting them like something bitter. "This is what you believe?" he asked Marlowe. "Some do," the human said. "Some think it means freedom. Others think it means chaos." Xylan did not reply. He only guided his character forward, the sound of dripping water and distant footsteps filling the silence. Somewhere deep inside, he felt a pull, not of curiosity, but of recognition. The part of him that had studied humans for war now studied them for something far stranger. They were creatures who could build paradise under the sea, and then burn it to ashes without ever leaving. And for the first time, Xylan began to think that this game was not for amusement at all. It was a mirror, and he was not sure he liked what it showed. The screen flickered as his character opened another door. The lights inside were dim, and the air was filled with the faint sound of a girl's voice, singing. He stepped inside. The moral choice. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. The sound of the ocean pressed faintly against the glass walls, a deep, constant hum like distant thunder. Commander Xylan guided his character forward. The room was narrow, lit only by a single flickering light bulb. In the center stood a little sister, her pale face tilted upward, her large, glowing eyes fixed on something only she could see. She clutched the strange needle device to her chest and hummed a broken lullaby. Xylan slowed. Even through the screen, the child seemed fragile, too fragile for this place. Then a voice crackled in his ear. It was not Marlowe's. It was part of the game. A woman's voice, firm and urgent. "You must help her. Remove the slug inside her. Free her." Before Xylan could react, another voice cut in, deep, calm, persuasive. "Or harvest her. Take what she carries. It will make you powerful." The alien's claw hesitated over the controller. "What is this?" he asked quietly. "It's a choice," Marlowe said. Xylan frowned. "You make your people choose between saving a child or killing her?" "Not real children," Marlowe replied. "But yes, the choice is yours." The alien studied the screen. The game offered two clear options, rescue or harvest. One path meant less reward now but spared the child. The other promised power instantly, but ended her life. In the Valari Empire, such choices were rarely made in hesitation. Survival always came first. Power was the path to survival. By Valari standards, the logical move was clear. Yet, this was not war. This was a human creation, and he suspected that the choice was not about the girl at all. It was about him. He stared at the child's wide eyes. They reminded him, unexpectedly, of the younger trainees back on his homeworld, those who looked to him for guidance during the early days of war. He had always told himself he fought for them, to keep them alive, but now, staring at this small, broken figure, he wondered how many of them he had sacrificed for the greater good. "Commander?" Marlowe prompted. Xylan's claws tightened. Without another word, he selected rescue. The screen shifted. His character knelt beside the girl, touching her gently. A flash of light. The child gasped, her eyes returning to a normal human color. She looked at him, whispered a soft, "Thank you," and vanished into the shadows. Xylan exhaled slowly. He didn't realize he had been holding his breath. "You spared her," Marlowe said. "I studied human behavior," Xylan replied quickly, as if explaining it to himself. "I wanted to see the result." Marlowe didn't challenge him. "And what did you learn?" The alien's gaze stayed fixed on the now empty room. That sometimes weakness can be a kind of strength. He moved forward, but the choice stayed in his mind. The game did not pause to congratulate him or punish him. It simply went on, as if the city did not care. The next hall was even darker. Shadows shifted along the walls, and voices whispered in the distance. Twice, splicers rushed from the gloom, forcing Xylan into frantic movements, dodging hooks and gunfire. Between battles he found another recording, a man's voice, charismatic and confident. It spoke of freedom from morality, of a world where the strong could shape the future. The speech was dangerous in its elegance. It sounded not unlike Valari war speeches, and it chilled him. Marlowe noticed his silence. "You're seeing it now, aren't you?" Xylan glanced at him. "Seeing what?" "That the most dangerous thing in Rapture isn't the splicers." The alien didn't answer, but as he guided his character through another leaking tunnel, he understood. It wasn't just the monsters. It was the ideas that made them. He reached another wide chamber, its floor covered in water. A Big Daddy patrolled slowly in the distance, the glow of its helmet cutting through the gloom. The little sister followed it closely, skipping through the puddles. This time the game didn't offer him a choice, but Xylan found himself thinking, if it did, would he save her again? Or would he take the power, now that he understood the cost of mercy in a place like this? The question lingered as the scene faded into another section of the city, and in the quiet moments between battles, Xylan began to suspect that the humans who built this game hadn't just designed a world, they had designed a mirror, one that forced its players to see themselves without the armor of excuses. By the time Marlowe finally paused the game, Xylan's expression had changed. The sharp arrogance in his eyes was still there, but something else had joined it, something quieter, heavier. "You still think this is a toy?" Marlowe asked. "Peace." The alien didn't look away from the frozen image of Rapture on the screen. "No," he said finally. "This is a weapon. The human mind." The rain of seawater dripping from the cracked ceiling became the only sound as Commander Xylan continued through Rapture's shadowed corridors. His character's footsteps echoed over wet tiles, each step a reminder of how empty this once great city had become. Marlowe sat beside him, saying little now. He didn't need to. The game was doing the talking. Xylan entered a vast hall, its high glass walls revealing the dark ocean outside. Neon signs still glowed faintly, casting ripples of red and blue across the water. The beauty of it was undeniable, but every shattered bench, every torn poster, whispered of something darker. On one wall, a giant painting showed smiling men and women in fine clothes raising glasses in celebration. Beneath it, in red paint, someone had scrawled 3 words. "We were wrong." The alien slowed, staring at the message. "Your people, they paint their failures on their own walls?" Marlowe leaned back. "Sometimes, we like to remember, even when it hurts." Xylan didn't respond. In the Valari Empire, failures were erased, rewritten, buried under propaganda. To leave a message like this, visible to anyone, felt almost like inviting weakness. Yet here it was, preserved in the middle of ruin. The next part of the game forced him into a fight. Splicers emerged from the shadows, laughing and cursing, their movements unpredictable. He fought them off, but it was the things they shouted that caught his attention. Some spoke about survival, others about power. One screamed about freedom from the chains of morality. When the last splicer fell, the silence returned. Xylan didn't move right away. These creatures, they were not born this way. "No," Marlowe said. "They chose it." Rapture gave them the tools to change themselves. No rules, no limits, just choice. Xylan's eyes narrowed. And this is what choice makes. Marlowe's reply was quiet. Sometimes. The alien pressed forward. In the next room, he found another of the game's audio diaries. A calm, confident voice filled the speakers. The man spoke of building a world where the strong could rise without being dragged down by the weak. He spoke of breaking chains, not physical ones, but the invisible chains of law, morality, and tradition. To Xylan, it was disturbingly familiar. He had heard speeches like this before, not from humans but from Valari warlords, words that promised freedom but led to conquest. The alien paused the game without thinking. "Do your people believe this?" he asked. "Some did," Marlowe answered. "Some still do. Others fight against it. That's the thing about humans. We can hold opposite ideas in the same room." Xylan resumed the game, but his mind was elsewhere. He thought of the Valari youth he trained back home. He thought of the speeches he had given, the battles fought in the name of freedom and strength. For the first time, he wondered how much of it had been truth, and how much had been convenience. The game drew him deeper. He entered a medical wing, the walls covered with faded posters of smiling doctors. In one room, a recording told the story of a surgeon who grew obsessed with perfection, cutting and reshaping his patients until they became something unrecognizable. Xylan stopped listening halfway through. He didn't need to hear the rest. He understood. Humans had the same hunger as Valari. To perfect, to control, to push limits, until the line between genius and madness vanished. But what unsettled him most wasn't that humans had created this darkness. It was that they had wrapped it in beauty, then invited others to walk through it, to feel it, live it, question it. "Why?" he asked suddenly. Marlowe looked at him. "Why what? Why show this? Why make such a thing? You could have made a perfect city and left it perfect. Instead, you built its fall." Marlowe's voice was steady. "Because we learn more from the fall than the rise." The alien didn't speak again for a long time. He simply kept playing, moving through corridors lit by broken lights, listening to voices that told the city's story piece by piece. When the next cutscene began, he leaned forward. His character stood before a grand staircase leading to a locked door. Over the speakers, a man's voice asked a simple question. "Would you kindly open the door?" Xylan's character obeyed instantly. No hesitation, no questioning. The alien frowned. "Why did I do that?" Marlowe's smile was faint. "You'll see." Outside, the ocean pressed closer against the glass. Somewhere deep in the city, a Big Daddy's heavy footsteps echoed, and for the first time Xylan wasn't sure if Rapture was testing his skill or his mind. The betrayal. The words were simple. "Would you kindly..." Commander Xylan had heard them many times during the game. Always polite, almost harmless. At first they had seemed like nothing more than a friendly request from the voice guiding him through Rapture. But now, something about them felt different. Marlowe didn't say a word. He just watched as Xylan's character moved forward, opening doors, pulling levers, entering dangerous areas, all because the voice asked him to. It wasn't an order. It wasn't a threat. Yet every time, without fail, Xylan obeyed. He froze mid-step, claws tightening on the controller. "Why do I keep doing what he says?" Marlowe leaned forward slightly. "Think about it, Commander. Are you choosing, or are you following?" The question cut deeper than Xylan expected. He guided his character onward, uneasy now, until the story reached a grand hall. Waiting for him was the man he had been trying to reach for so long, the leader of Rapture, the one whose voice had filled the air since the beginning. The conversation was tense. Accusations, philosophy, arguments about power and freedom. And then came the some moment. The truth. The voice, his supposed ally, revealed it casually, almost like a joke. The phrase, "Would you kindly," was not a request at all. It was a trigger, a command hidden deep in the player's mind, Every action he had taken, every step forward, had been because he was told to. The alien's claws froze over the controller. The realization hit him harder than any space battle ever had. "I wasn't choosing," he whispered. "No," Marlowe said quietly. "You were being controlled." On screen, the betrayal unfolded with cruel precision. The man he trusted forced him to obey, step by step, proving how deep the control went. The character, and by extension, Xylan, had never truly been free. It was more than a twist in a game, it was a challenge. Xylan thought of the Valari Empire, of the soldiers who followed his orders without question, of the commands he had given in war that were obeyed instantly. How many of those actions had been true choice? How many had been obedience disguised as loyalty? The game didn't linger on sympathy. It pushed forward, forcing him into a confrontation that ended in violence. And when it was over, Xylan sat back in his chair, staring at the frozen image on the screen. "This is dangerous," he said slowly. Marlowe raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "You've built a tool that can make someone believe they are free, while guiding every step they take. If you can do this in a game, you can do it anywhere." "That's the point," Marlowe replied. "BioShock isn't just about a city under the sea, it's about asking the question, are you truly free, or just following orders you don't see?" Xylan's gaze returned to the controller in his hands. For the first time it felt heavy, as if it carried more than plastic and wires. The game moved on, but the alien's focus had shifted. Every voice, every instruction, every objective now felt suspicious. He began to test them, disobey when he could, search for other ways forward, and yet, sometimes he still followed. Sometimes the easiest path was the one offered, and each time it unsettled him more. He reached a point where the game's world opened again into one of Rapture's grand plazas. The broken beauty surrounded him, a reminder of the city's promise and its downfall. Splicers moved in the distance, their shadows stretching long in the flickering light. Somewhere far off, the faint rumble of a Big Daddy echoed. It was a sound Xylan had come to respect, even fear. "Do you know what's strange?" Marlowe asked suddenly. "What?" "You still want to keep going." Xylan didn't answer, but Marlowe was right. Despite the manipulation, despite the lies, part of him wanted to see the end, to understand the full truth. Perhaps he thought that was the real trap. Humans didn't need chains or weapons to control someone. They only needed curiosity, and curiosity was something even he could not resist. As the next section loaded, the ocean pressed dark and silent outside the glass walls. Rapture's lights flickered like dying stars in the deep. And somewhere in that darkness, Commander Xylan began to wonder if the real game wasn't on the screen at all, but in his own mind. The reflection. The city of Rapture felt different now. Commander Xylan still moved through its dark halls, but the weight in his chest was no longer from the enemies or the danger. It was from the understanding that every choice he thought was his own might have been planted there from the start. The glass tunnels curved like ribs of a giant beast, holding back the crushing ocean. Strange lights flickered outside, fish swimming lazily, their movements graceful and free. Free. The word itself had changed meaning for him. He reached the last stages of the game. His character, worn and bloodied, pressed deeper into the city's heart. The voices he had followed for hours were quieter now, leaving him in a silence that felt heavier than the noise before it. Marlowe said nothing. He knew this part didn't need explanation. A final battle loomed. It was fierce, chaotic. Splicers attacked in waves, each more desperate than the last. A man once untouchable now stood vulnerable, his strength stripped away. And when it was over, Rapture was quiet again. The screen faded to a softer light. Xylan's character walked with the little sisters he had saved. Their small hands reached for him, their voices calling him not by title, not by rank, but as if he were family. It was not victory in the Valari sense. There were no medals, no flags, no enemies kneeling in defeat, and yet something inside him felt full. When the credits rolled, Xylan did not put the controller down right away. His claws rested on it like he was holding a relic. Marlowe finally broke the silence. "So, Commander, what do you think now?" Xylan's eyes stayed on the screen. "Your people, you fight wars with guns and ships. But this is another kind of war, one fought inside the mind." "Do you see why I showed you?" Marlowe asked. The alien turned to him slowly. "Yes, you wanted me to see that you do not just train soldiers, you train thinkers. You prepare minds for choices, for chaos, for questioning orders." Marlowe smiled faintly. And that is why you are dangerous," Xylan said. His voice was calm, but the truth in it was sharp. The human didn't argue. He simply leaned back, letting the weight of the moment settle. Xylan stood, pacing slowly across the small room. He thought of the Valari youth, taught to obey, to follow orders without hesitation. He thought of his own training, the years spent believing that freedom was an illusion and only strength mattered. But the game had shown him something uncomfortable. Humans had the power to plant an idea in someone's head and let that idea grow until it felt like their own. They didn't just fight enemies, they shaped them. The worst part, he admired it. He stopped at the window, looking out at the real ocean beyond the human city. The deep blue stretched endlessly, the horizon blurred with the sky. He imagined Rapture out there somewhere, still sinking deeper into darkness, still whispering its lessons to anyone who dared to enter. "Do all your people play such games?" he asked finally. "Not all," Marlowe said, "but enough to make a difference." Xylan's claws tapped the glass. If the Valari Empire had such tools, perhaps we would not need so many wars, or perhaps we would win them more easily. Marlowe's gaze sharpened. Or maybe you'd realize some wars aren't worth fighting. The alien didn't reply. The thought was dangerous, not because it was wrong, but because it was tempting. When he finally set the controller down, it was with care, as if he were returning a weapon to its case. "I came here to negotiate peace," he said slowly. "But now I understand, peace with humans is not the absence of war. It is simply a different battlefield." Marlowe's expression didn't change. "Then I think you understand us better than most." The alien's yellow eyes held his for a long moment. There was no hatred in them, no fear, only a quiet respect that neither of them had expected when the day began. Outside, the waves rolled endlessly. Inside, Rapture's music still lingered in Xylan's mind. He didn't know if it would ever leave. The change. The Valari homeworld was a place of sharp metal and endless skies. Towers like jagged spears rose into the clouds, their silver tips catching the light of the twin suns. Inside the highest of these towers sat the Valari Council, 12 leaders whose voices decided the fate of worlds. Commander Xylan stood before them. He had returned from Earth without war plans, without enemy weaknesses, without even a single human weapon to display. In his hands he carried only a small black Sam. The council chamber was silent. Elder Voth, the oldest among them, leaned forward. "You were sent to study the humans," he said. "We expected intelligence reports, battle analysis. Instead, you bring a box?" Xylan met his gaze calmly. "Not a box, a weapon." The murmurs began immediately. Some laughed, a low, harsh sound. Others frowned in confusion. Elder Voth raised a clawed hand, and the room quieted. "Explain." Xylan set the case on the central table and opened it. Inside lay the small human device, the controller, and a thin disc marked with strange letters. BioShock. The council members stared. One of them scoffed. "A game? This is your great discovery?" "Yes," Xylan said simply. "A game that is not a game." He told them about Rapture, the city under the sea, the dream of freedom turned into ruin, the moral choices, the betrayals, the voices that could guide you without you ever realizing you were being led. He told them how it felt to hold the controller, believing he was in control, only to learn that every step had been planned for him. At first some smirked, but as Xylan spoke, the smirks faded. His voice was steady, deliberate, each word cutting deeper. You think of humans as warriors with primitive ships and stubborn hearts, he said. But you are wrong. Their greatest weapon is not in their fleets. It is in their minds. They can teach you without telling you they are teaching. They can guide your thoughts without ever touching you. And they can make you believe that every choice you make is yours alone. The room fell silent. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Elder Voth's eyes narrowed. And you fear this? Xylan's yellow gaze did not waver. I respect it. I also fear it. In the Valari Empire, we train soldiers to obey without question. The humans, they train each other to question everything, even themselves. That makes them yishus, unpredictable. That makes them dangerous. He lifted the disc from its case. The reflection of the chamber lights glimmered across its surface. This single object held me in its grip for hours. It showed me beauty and ruin, morality and madness, loyalty and betrayal. And when it ended, it did not leave me. I am still in Rapture. I will be there for the rest of my life. A younger counselor, brash and skeptical, crossed his arms. And what do you suggest? That we ban such human creations? That we destroy them? Xylan shook his head slowly. No, that we learn from them. That we build our own. Not to copy, but to understand the human mind the way they understand each other. Because if we do not, we will always be fighting them on a battlefield they have already won. The chamber was silent again. Outside, one of the twin suns sank lower, its light turning the sky a deep amber. Finally, Elder Voth spoke. You believe this game is a warning. Xylan's voice dropped to a low, certain tone. It is more than a warning. It is a mirror, and when you look into it, you may not like the face you see. He closed the case and stepped back. The council said nothing more, but he saw the way their eyes lingered on the small black box. That night, alone in his quarters, Xylan placed the game on his desk. He didn't connect it to a screen. He didn't play it again. He simply stared at it, as if expecting it to speak. And in a way it did, but not in words, but in the weight it carried. The weight of a lesson he could never unlearn. Humans do not need to conquer you with guns or ships. They can make you walk into their hands willingly, smiling, believing it was your idea all along. When the Valari fleet returned to Earth one day, Xylan knew they would come armed with weapons and strategy. But deep down, he also knew it would not be enough. Because somewhere in some quiet human room, another story like Rapture would already be waiting, ready to change everything.